Catherine, I'm so excited to have you here on the show today. You're actually podcast number 2 in the Biohacking Wellness podcast series. So thank you for being here today. I'm really excited to share your wealth of knowledge that you're going to bring to us today. And, I know that I have a story. Most of us who do what we do right now got here because we had a story or an issue that was failed to be resolved by conventional medicine.
Absolutely.
And I know that you have a story as well. So, that led me to where I am. And I think your journey led you to where you are. So would you mind sharing what some of your health challenges were, how you overcame them, or anything that you want to say about that?
Absolutely. And thank you for having me, because I really do enjoy sharing what I've learned, because absolutely important to take control over your own health. And that's what you and I and so many others are trying to help people to be empowered to do. Yes, I did have some real health challenges, probably looking back maybe about 15 years ago. I had off and on issues with rashes, fatigue, and, but was able to continue on with my life. But suddenly it became impossible. I just was in chronic pain, and I had this brain fog, and really all contributing to all of it was inflammation in my body.
Right.
And even though the tests showed that when conventional medical doctors did the tests, they didn't really do anything to address it. And I happened upon Dr. Mark Hyman's book, Ultra Metabolism, because of course what part of it was not being able to lose the weight that I had gained. And I was set on a path that I haven't looked back. It's more than just the weight. It's every health situation you can imagine that's affected by it. So I also was interested in Reiki. I had become a Reiki level 2 at the time. So I started seeing the component of energy and thoughts and how suppressed emotions can contribute to your health issues, because when you're only addressing one part of it, sometimes you don't get the effects that you want. Right. So that's set me down the path of learning and discovering. I came across EFT on the web and was working with it on my own, and decided it was something that I'd like to find out more about. I went to some workshops nearby and worked with practitioners, and was blown away by how important that aspect of clearing those emotions can be, and how quick the efforts can be seen. And so that's pretty much where I continue to learn and read and reinforce what I've learned to be true for me, and I hope for everybody else, that you can take control of your own health.
I think that this podcast today is really important, because you just touched upon something. Especially now it's resolution time, and everybody's trying to change their health and their weight and their life. But I think that the emotional aspect is extremely overlooked, and I think people just don't realize the impact that it has on their physical well-being. I mean, they know that stress affects their health, but there's a lot more to it than that. I mean, things that happened in our past, and there's so much. So I'm so glad that we're going to talk about that today. I'm really excited. But what I'd like to know, if we could take a minute so that you could actually describe to the listeners on a physical level, what is EFT and tapping, and how does it work on us physiologically?
Okay, EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique. It's an energy therapy, like so many of them out there. And really what it does is it takes the Chinese meridian points, the acupuncture or acupressure points used in Chinese medicine, and we tap on them physically while we say reminder phrases about whatever issue we're working on. And it helps to release the trapped emotions that things that we've held on to, our core beliefs, things that affect how we navigate our world. And it is amazing that you can go your whole life and not really understand the connections between what you were taught as a child without even realizing that it's part of your writing on your wall, as they say, and how it affects how you experience things. And so what EFT does is helps to bring those to the surface. A lot of times people have a hard time saying the negative things when we do the tapping because they believe, oh, if I bring that up, I'm going to be drawing more of it to me, that law of attraction and all of that, which is, yes, it's true that you don't want to be putting out their negative emotions, but we don't let that stay. We reverse it. And it doesn't happen immediately. It happens when the client is ready to do it. So you could be saying negative things for a while, but we don't leave that out there for the universe to have that be the message you want sent out there. We turn it around, and that's the difference. And so it's hopefully reversing and understanding how that affects your choices, and then replacing it with more positive ways of seeing things. So it kind of neutralizes what's happened to you in the past. And it takes away the charge of what it is that you're bringing to the situation. Because as you know, events are just events. They have no positive or negative. We bring to it what we bring to it. Right. And so we have a choice. But unfortunately, because of what we've experienced in our past or what our feelings are about things, we often don't realize we do have a choice. So emotional freedom technique helps you to realize you have a choice.
Now, I mean, I think that it's important to note, too, when it comes to energy medicine overall, energy can't be destroyed. It can only change form. So in a sense, are you almost like with NLP, we talk about turning down the sound of certain things, or so is that what you're doing in a sense with this therapy? Are you sort of turning down the volume of those negative emotions, or what happens to them? Where do they go?
Well, it neutralizes them, and it removes the blocks, because what emotional freedom technique therapy believes is that they're blocked emotions. Your body's holding on to it, and that's manifests itself in symptoms in your life. And so those symptoms can be, and we'll talk about that later, I think, in what we're going to be covering. Yes. But, we hold on to those emotions, and EFT brings them up so that they can be managed. And it can be turning down the volume. It can be, but before you turn down the volume, scream it out, because you've got to get it out. And then you can feel the flow of the energy and
experience it, and then sort of file it away.
And
let it go. So what part of our brain or body, like what is this actually acting on? Is there a specific part of the body that this acts on, or does it act on our energy overall? How does that work?
Well, they actually have been doing quite a few studies in the last 10 years to see scientifically how it does affect the body. And if, technical terms are not my forte, so please excuse me. They've been able to measure the cortisol levels and watch them drop. And that's, of course, a big one. Huge. Especially if you're trying to lose weight. If you can, and also other hormone levels that they're finding are affected by it, because you're allowing the flow and allowing the body to work and function the way it's intended to function once those things you're holding on to are out of the way.
Amazing. So what really resonated with this particular form of energy medicine? Well, I know you are also a Reiki practitioner. Is that right?
Absolutely.
So that is your field, and you also have another specialty in that energy medicine field as well, right?
I do. I just finished some training in matrix re-imprinting, which uses EFT techniques, and I combine a lot of different energy techniques, energy medicine, and I use what I think is appropriate for the client and what they're open to, because some of them are a little more avant-garde, I guess. And so, people have to be open to understanding it and wanting it to work and feeling comfortable with it. EFT is becoming very mainstream. There are some books that are on the bestsellers lists, and people are finding out about it and realizing that it's a very powerful tool that they can use for themselves.
This is an exciting time for people like us. I mean, we're not looked at as kooks as much anymore. But this type of medicine, in my opinion, is almost like, when I talk to people, sometimes I'll say, sometimes you just have to understand that there's things beyond you that maybe you don't understand, they just are, like gravity. You can deny gravity all you want, but if you step off of a building, you will hit the ground. Absolutely. And so this kind of medicine, whether you believe it or not, or whether you choose to embrace it or not and give it a try, is one of those things. You have to take a leap of faith. You have to take that first step, because you really can't say much about it if you haven't experienced it. I think it's worth the experience. So speaking of experiences that people get, what types of issues or emotions can somebody gain control over with a practice like EFT? I know that emotional issues play a huge role in just about everything, especially, as we know, not being able to recover properly from an illness or reach a weight loss goal or even get the life that they dream of. So what are you helping people overcome in their lives?
Well, I work with a variety of situations, a variety of issues, and it can be something as simple as, I just don't understand why I'm so frustrated with why I having to take care of my daughter's rabbit this week. And, but as silly as that sounds, I had a session with a woman and we uncovered a really deep-seated earlier issue that contributed to her feeling tense about having to do that. So you just never know where it's going to go. But I mean, what it's commonly used for, influencing your abundance or helping you with weight loss, or even something simple like procrastination, where if you find yourself constantly behind and you don't understand why, in spite of your best efforts and your best intentions, you're having this experience over and over and over again, chances are there's something in your past that's contributing to this resistance. And so if we can discover that with a session or two and you're aware of it, it's awareness and knowledge that gives you the power. And so if you're not aware that you're doing something, or you don't see this connection to what you had a negative experience with in the past, then you can't change it. And so it helps to be able to clear the path for change, really, for anything. I like to work, I happen to be drawing to me, I guess, people in their next stage of life who are going through transitions, and either they're just going into retirement and aren't sure what they want to do with their lives, or they're finding themselves as empty nesters now, all of a sudden have all this time on their hands, and also people who are in the role of caregiving. And that emotional roller coaster, anybody who's had that experience understands the role of caregiving can be a real emotional upheaval for somebody, as well as changing your life and not feeling in control anymore of your own life, and until your responsibility is done with the person that you're taking care of, for however that resolves. So it's a mixed bag. I think that people who are drawn to a certain practitioner, that I believe that when the student is ready, the teacher will show up. Yes, and so I find that it's very helpful to know that if the comfort level you feel with somebody is more important than what their specialty is or whatever. I'd help people with traveling issues on planes, people with dental issues, not wanting to go to the dentist. So it can be a fear, a phobia, a lot of things.
I had chronic pain, and I happened to see a couple of sessions on, I don't know, somebody's website or during an event, an online event. And, at the time, I'm always open to anything. But it did take me till the second time to really notice a difference. But I really did notice a difference. And I do want to get into, how you begin to use EFT. But I do want to share a story since we're on this subject of emotional issues. I'm gathering that you, like myself, I've been a weight loss counselor and a health coach for about 30 years. So I've had a lot of people share a lot of things with me, and you get to a relationship where you are almost like their therapist.
Yeah.
Especially with what you're doing right now, you're bringing out those emotions. It's very emotional. But long story short, I had a client whose husband was in a very famous rock band. And so she was very social. She had been with him since she was very young, and she was going through the weight loss process, had lost about 25 pounds. Things came to a dead halt, and I didn't see her for months. And I couldn't figure out why. After repeated phone calls, she never called me back. One day, she finally stopped into the office, and she said, "I need to talk with you. I'm ready to start again." And I said, "Okay, so tell me what happened." Well, when you're trying to get to the root of someone's issue and help them to bring it up, you're digging, you're asking questions. Well, evidently, I asked a few questions that dug up some serious dirt in her past. She was seriously physically abused. And it all came out, and it turned out that she felt like she didn't want to get below that weight because, because of what she would face if she did. Attention from men. It was a whole psychological thing, and that wasn't my intention to dig that deep, but that can happen when you're doing that kind of work. So how do you begin? Where do you start with somebody when you're doing an EFT session?
Well, that's I think I should probably explain a little bit about what the tapping tree. Yeah, just so that you can understand, you can start anywhere. The tapping tree, if you can imagine a tree and think of the leaves as your symptoms, and those symptoms can be overweight, any physical ailment, illness, pain, or procrastination, or clutter. Those are physical manifestations of what the next level is the emotions, which are the branches of the tree. So your emotions feed into those symptoms. And the emotions can be anger, resentment, but anything, guilt, frustration. But I find that 99.9% of the time, even under the layers of anger or fear or guilt, or any other emotion, fear is the primary reason why we hold on to.
The pleasure or pain?
Yes.
Perception.
So, you can always go deeper with those emotions. The events are the trunk of the tree. And if you think about the events in your life are what kind of feed your emotions. If you've had a happy childhood, then your emotions are going to reflect that. If you've had abuse in your life, if you've experienced bullying in your life, that's going to feed the emotions, which then create the leaves of the tree or the symptoms. But when you go down to the roots of the tree, those are your limiting beliefs, your core beliefs, those things that have been written on your wall as a child, either by authority figures, your parents, your clergy, your teachers, anybody, older children, any experience you've had that kind of help you to see the view. That's how you view your world. These are truth to you. Whether they're true or not, they're true to you. Mm-hmm. And so that feeds how you experience the event. And then that feeds the emotion, and then that feeds the symptoms. So maybe to give you an example, I could say I have a core belief from when I was growing up, and I'm just going to make this up. All rich people are snobs. If I say all rich people are snobs, I learned that from my parents. I learned that from all of the, all of the people in my life. Somehow they've given me that message and I've taken that on, and that's true to me. So if I go to a party and I meet somebody and I find out he's CEO of a huge company and he's got money and yachts and mansions, and I'm going to look at him and think, you must be a snob. And so when I'm experiencing that event with him, I'm going to be looking for the things that support my core belief that he's a snob. So I'm going to be listening and hearing and validating what I really believe. I might, in emotional way, get anxious about my experience with him. And then I might look in the mirror and realize I've got a rash or, like flushing on my neck. Mm-hmm. So that's the symptom. So that's kind of how it works. You can go in any direction with that. And when we go to work on somebody's issues, usually what I'll do is say, what's bothering you today? Because that's where it's a good place to start always. And it can be anywhere on the tree. If somebody's experiencing really chronic hip pain and it's screaming at them, that your body's trying to tell you something. So what can we uncover about what you're feeling? And always trying to tie it back to the body and the feelings that you're having. Some people have a harder time than others with that. They're not willing to go into their body to really feel that. They don't want to feel the emotion. So it depends. Sometimes you have to sneak up on the problem. That's a technique we use. Sometimes it's, we can go right to a core belief. Like, I know I've always learned rich people are snobs. How is that affecting how I'm going through the world? Did I have an event recently that I realized that was a problem for me? And how can I release that and change that belief so that I don't have that same experience next time? Maybe I shut myself out of an opportunity with business because I just didn't want to have to deal with a snob, So it affects us in ways we aren't even always aware.
I can see that.
So does that explain enough?
Yes, that was wonderful. And the thing that comes to mind for me a lot is, I think especially for women, not that men don't feel this way, I'm sure that some of them do, but a lot of times women bear the burden of a lot of the household activity, whether they work or not. It's just kind of a cultural thing, and some people are more lenient about that than others, but a lot of times women feel like they're not deserving of whatever it is. I think that not deserving is a big one. Do you see that a lot as well?
Oh, absolutely. And that affects what our money story is, what our relationship stories are. It affects everything. When you say, I'm not enough or I'm not worthy, you're telling that to every aspect of your life. And so that's a big one to want to shift if at all possible.
Okay. Well, then, speaking of shifting, how do you know when you've cleared a limiting core belief? How do you know you're there or you're in a better place from when you started? Well, when we start a session, if we're starting with something that is affecting us immediately, because that's the best place to start, and then we start unpeeling layers and aspects of whatever the issue is, you want to work on one aspect at a time. Okay. It doesn't always work out that way because things come up and you want to deal with them immediately. But if we rate the intensity with the SUDS level, subjective unit of distress or subjective unit of discomfort, 0 to 10, and say, how intense is this feeling for you right now? Whatever the emotion is, the anger, the fear, the upset, whatever it is we're working on. And where are you feeling it in your body? And sometimes it's not a physical pain, but a tightness in your chest, or your throat closes up, or your ears start ringing, so it can, all of a sudden when you start talking about whatever it is that's a problem, you start realizing your stomach's tight. And so we realize that we are holding on to it. And so if, say we start at a 10, we do the rounds of tapping
to try to bring that SUDS level down. And then we rephrase things and see where we are with it. We try to get it down to a 0. Not always possible in one session. So we have techniques to put it away so it's not going to be affecting you until our next session or until you decide to work on it again on your own. So to know when it's clear is when it's not creating a trigger anymore. Is it not having that same impact on you as it was before? You know, I get so angry when my husband says such and such. Well, that's something about you that's the problem. It's not his issue, you know, so trying to figure that out and then realizing, yeah, I don't have to respond that way, and finding a new way to respond to it. Like, well, that's an interesting point of view. And seeing if you're able to do that, then you know you've cleared it.
Okay, that's great. So yeah. I'm sure that this happens, but what if you clear something and you have a setback, or does that happen? You know, is there a strategy for that?
Well, usually it's not a setback as much as it's another aspect of the same issue is coming up. And so you don't always have to clear every issue. We try to go back as early as we can remember this being a problem for you. Okay. And trying to start there because it helps to clear it more quickly. But if it's a very big event, it may not only be the fear of being found out, or, you know, you might be finding little aspects of it. So clearing one aspect of it may bring up something else. So it may appear to be the same issue, but it's another facet of it. So we just need to work on that one then. So that's why it's important to be, I mean, people who use EFT regularly, like daily, to help keep themselves clear. As a practitioner, when I went through the certification, we have to keep a personal peace procedure list of all the things that we need to work on, that we are working on, so that we can be clearer of our things, so help our clients differently. That so our own stuff isn't in the way. So
exactly. Well, that's a really, really good explanation. I'm really excited. This is wonderful information that you're sharing today, Catherine.
Good.
We know that so many medical professionals are now embracing some of the energy therapies. I mean, we've been embracing, or many have been embracing acupuncture for a while, but how widely accepted is EFT or a Reiki type of therapy among conventional medical professionals?
Well, as you know, a lot of hospitals are now incorporating Reiki volunteers in their programs to go around to help people heal. So Reiki is becoming very much more mainstream.
That's wonderful, and I did not actually know that, so thank you for sharing that. That's great information.
Okay, and so I think as the scientific community and the medical community become more aware of, well, why does one patient heal and another one doesn't? There's a missing component that we're not addressing, and all the drugs in the world don't make the difference for some people, and yet for others, they're able to tolerate pain with minimal pain meds or something. So they're beginning to question it and looking for answers themselves, because they really want to help us. It's just that their knowledge of what all the facets of wellness are being finally expanded. People like Dr. Daniel Ammon, who's a psychiatrist who really firmly believes in the energy medicine and eating well. Dr. Bruce Lipton, who was a cellular biologist who does studies now to realize what the impact of every aspect is on our cells. Why do some generate more perfectly than others? Why do some transmute? And so, you know, those kinds of things, as those are beginning to develop, more people are coming on board and realizing how important this is in the aspect of healing and health, well-being.
Yeah, and this is wonderful. And, you know, I really wanted to do my part in terms of bringing energy medicine to people and let them know that, you know, these are things that you can see a difference with fairly quickly, as opposed to, you know, a drug therapy that may or may not work and probably will cause another symptom, and you never get to the actual root cause. I love the explanation of the tree and the leaves. I think that really just helps solidify in our minds what this whole thing is really about. So when someone's coming to you, about how many sessions does it typically take before you see a difference in a particular issue?
Yeah,
is it vary?
That's an interesting question because it really depends. Nobody likes that as the answer, but it can be as simple as one session if it's something that they want to work on specifically. Like I had a woman who was afraid to fly and she had to go on a business trip, and she was really upset that she was having such a tough time thinking about getting on that plane. And her last experience had not been a good one with flying. So we had a very simple session that ended up, she was able to get on the plane, land, get it back on, and go to the next destination and come home. And she told me what a breeze it was. It was just so different for her. So if it's something like that, a phobia or fear, and we can get to the root of it relatively easily. And it also depends on how open the client is to wanting to change, because you know the joke of, you know, they have to want to change and it is true.
It's true.
That we hold on to these beliefs, or we hold on to these symptoms because they're serving us in some way. And unless we can see the value of letting them go and see what's possible in replacement of it, it's harder to let them go. So the goal, though, I do want to mention the goal of all ethical energy medicine practitioners is to make the client independent as soon as possible. You know, I mean, it's not, sometimes they're looking for answers and they're feeling so desperate. They just want the answer. It's important for people to realize that we want the client to become independent as quickly as they're able to. And it depends on how much they're willing to work independently as well, because it's wonderful to do a session, but if you can teach yourself to recognize when that trigger is happening for you and stop where you are and say, okay, I'm going to try my EFT right now and see, this is bothering me. Why is this coming up for me right now? And ask yourself the questions while you're tapping on the points. You're going to be able to get to the root of things faster, and you'll come back to the next session more open and something to share, because the whole idea is the client is always in charge in a session. We don't go anywhere you're not comfortable, although, the idea is to help you to make those connections. But it's important that the client feel confident and comfortable. And so as quickly as possible, it can be a few sessions. I still work with somebody right now myself, but I check in less frequently. I mean, it's always nice to have somebody that you can go to work with. I still work with other EFT practitioners on a regular basis. We help each other by trading sessions. So it's always nice to have somebody to go to help you through some of the things.
Yeah, like a little mastermind group, and where you can be the client for a change is probably very nice. It
feels good to feel safe enough to let go of some of the things that you've been holding on to for your whole life many times. So
right, I was going to say, I'm sure you find that some people have never addressed some of the issues that come up, and you really do kind of need to do your homework, it sounds like, so that when you're recognizing the feeling, you have something in your toolbox you can pull out immediately and do. And that's something that I encourage people to do as well, when it comes to losing weight. My colleague used to keep a bowl of colored rocks on her desk.
Mm-hmm.
They're just, little colored stones, nothing special. And she would ask every one of her clients, I thought this was wonderful, she would ask every one of her clients to pull out a stone. And she said, this is your stone, and when you feel like this, then you want to pull that out. You're going to attach that to you're getting past this, and this is what I'd like to see you try to do. And she would explain it to them, and they would carry that stone in their pocket, and they were very successful with that because they had a strategy. So you're actually giving people a tool that they can use forever and ever.
Absolutely.
Anytime they feel this way, and with any situation that's causing them to not move forward or not move past certain emotions.
I'm smiling because I used a similar technique. I'm a former teacher, but I do teach adult ed sometimes, and I did a group who were going for their high school equivalency. And these are people in their 40s and 50s who are very test phobic. I mean, it was tough. It was a tough test. So I'm trying to prepare them for these tests, and I gave them some stones that are, this is for courage, this one's for, I don't remember what they all were, but I gave them to them in a little silk bag. And one of the guys was so funny because they got to take the test more than once if they needed to, but two of them passed one part of the test and one of them didn't. And the other guy says to him, well, that's because you didn't carry your rocks. And it's true, He says, I take these things with me wherever I go. And these are people who have no interest in this stuff. But you know what? You need a talisman sometimes.
You do. A talisman is a good word. You do need something sometimes. It can be a picture, a coin, a song, a phrase. It can be anything. But that stuff has so much more power that I think some people give it credit for. And that's one of the things that I encourage, is to find one of those things that can remind you of what your goal is or whatever.
Absolutely.
But that's funny. If you could offer the listening audience one word of advice, what would that be?
Understand and respect the power of your thoughts and their impact on your health and the life you lead. And remember, you're the one who's in control of the navigation system, so make sure it's in good working order. And that's what all of these tools that you're presenting, and the physical support of eating well is important, because you want your brain clear of chemicals and toxins in order to be able to think clearly. Your emotional toxins, getting rid of those, but that you really do have a choice. That we can convince ourselves and talk ourselves into believing that this is just the way it is. I have no choice. It's never going to be different. And as soon as your thoughts start going down that path, guess what?
You just set that in motion.
Yes, you've got that going for you.
Yeah.
So you have the opposite control as well. You can change whatever it is you are dissatisfied with in your life, simply by changing your thoughts. And that, all of the other things are support that we do, but that's very important to do.
Words to live by. Well, Catherine, I want to thank you sincerely for sharing this incredible information in such a beautiful way.
Thank you.
For myself and the listeners today. And I know there are people out there, though, that might want more information about you or where they can contact you, because you do Skype consultations, correct?
Absolutely.
Okay.
It's a big part of what I do. I work with people all over the world. Well, you can certainly reach me by email, and it's Catherine with a C, at cturgeon, TURGEON.com. That's my email address. Or if you'd like to call me, I'm in New Hampshire, 603-630-3477. And my website is in the process of being revamped, so hopefully within the next week it'll be up and people can find me there, and it's cturgeon.com. and find out. You can read my blogs and see what I have available there. And I do workshops, I do presentations to large groups. I'm working on
in the New Hampshire area.
So far, but I'll travel. I don't have a flying phobia.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay,
no,
well,
so it's wonderful.
I'm going to make sure that we get that typed up so that people can access your information.